England's World Cup balloon, well, it really popped tonight as Spain hung on for the win. That was about as irate as I think I've ever seen Gareth Southgate for that goal that was disallowed for Danny Welbeck right at the end there. Kevin Kilbane and Keith Andrews watching that. Right, give us your take, lads. Should it have been allowed?
I thought it was a fairly standard decision from the referee. That, look, in my opinion, they are overprotected in scenarios like that. Goalkeepers, yeah. Any type of contact, and let's not forget we are in a contact sport. A lot's been made about tackling in recent years, but for me, goalkeepers are overprotected at times. And in this scenario, I think it proves the case because it should have been given a perfectly good goal.
Well, let's have a look closely at it, Kevin. And there's a challenge with the defender as well as De Gea. So what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, he actually does shove the defender. He shoves the defender there as he's going for it. He doesn't do an awful lot. The only thing I would say, I don't think it's a foul, but he doesn't actually go to attempt to challenge the ball. He turns his back on the ball. So he's not attempting to do anything, essentially. All he's doing is turning his back on the ball. David De Gea falls over him. I think it's a soft foul. I think it's a soft one, but they're easy decisions for referees to make. It's an easy one. Any sort of contact...
And De Gea's doing everything there to get a given, isn't he?
Yeah, but he does fall a little bit awkwardly there. Look, he falls awkwardly on his back there, so it is an awkward fall.
Is that little nudge there?
Yeah, maybe that, maybe that. Let's be honest, it's a soft one. It is a soft one, but... Yeah, I understand any sort of contact with keepers like that, they're given. So that's it, really.
Gareth, very unhappy.
Yeah.
Very unhappy.
Yeah, I mean, they say that...
Forgot his
waistcoat. Yeah, it's the waistcoat, wasn't it?
The calmness had gone from him tonight. Yeah, that was it.
Yeah, exactly, the lucky waistcoat. It had started so well for England. 1-0, Rashford. And a fine goal made in Manchester, as we said earlier.
Yeah, they worked it well. We'll touch on Harry Kane a little bit later on, but he set it off. First touch created the space to allow Luke Shaw drive forward, and that's Luke Shaw at his absolute best. Full of confidence, driving forward. It's a difficult ball. It really is. Kev mentioned at half-time, Nacho were both absolutely in agreement that he should have done better. But Rashford gets into the area where he's going to score goals. Too many times you see number 10s and wingers staying on the periphery of the play and they're easy to mark. He made Luke Shaw's mind up and he finished it well.
And Luke Shaw, obviously, if you joined that match late, the 9 or 10 minutes of injury time that was added was because Luke Shaw was taken off with a really horrible head injury just after the second half restarted. We have heard that he is doing fine. He is up and talking and walking about in the dressing room and didn't go to hospital, so that's really good news for him after his injury problems. Let's have a look at the Spanish goals then. Really impressive goals from them as well.
Really well worked, yeah. I mean, this is the second one, isn't it, that puts them in front here. Brilliant ball in, put into a dangerous area from Thiago, but it's preventable. It is. I spoke about England before the game and how well organised they've been. Joe Gomez, Harry Kane makes the mistake, I think, initially as well. Stands, doesn't go back with his man, lets Rodrigo run through without putting a hand into him to block him. But also Joe Gomez, body shape, doesn't get his body shape.
And Maguire's positioning there, I know Ramos was...
yeah, Maguire, he's actually quite clever. Ramos just pins him. He pins him, stops him from actually making any sort of movement to get back across. He's playing him onside. He plays Rodrigo onside. So that's, yeah, I'm with you in your point. Perhaps maybe if he steps up and keeps in line with the rest of the defenders, he plays Rodrigo offside. But it's actually the presence of Ramos that stops him.
Did they defend badly tonight, Keith, England?
Yeah, I said to you at half-time, they don't convince me defensively. Yeah. There's been a lot to admire about this England team under Gareth Southgate, especially in the approach to the World Cup and in the World Cup, but defensively wouldn't be one of the areas. That was
an area, sorry, that was changed tonight with Gomez coming in for Walker.
Yeah, I wouldn't judge that, him as an isolated case. Shaw, we picked a hole in the first Spanish goal where he could have done better. Incidences, they could do better, absolutely, but they just don't convince me, Tommy. When they drop into those areas and the protection they get in front and central midfield areas just simply isn't there.
Tommy, I think Gomez switches off. I do. I think he's reliant on his pace. That's got him probably out of so many holes through underage football and maybe even to the top level that he's got to now. He's got unbelievable pace, but he'll get caught out. He got caught out for that second goal there tonight, what I felt. But so many times he lets runners go off him and then he reacts. He doesn't react before the attacking player. I think you'll get caught out with that.
Let's talk about Spain and how good they were tonight. Up until that last flurry, they were really impressive. And one of the things that Enrique said is he wanted to make them less predictable. Were they less predictable tonight?
Oh, very much so. They kept England guessing. At times we've seen the traditional style of keeping the ball in central midfield as they overload areas, mainly with Isco dropping into that puck to make an extra man. But there was no doubt we've seen these type of passes, runners willing to get in beyond. That was Thiago driving in from a midfield position. And time again, we've seen Spain down through the years just keep the ball at the back, dominating possession, recording serious amount of passes. But there was clearly an angle tonight where, can we test this back three? Can we make runs inside? I thought Rodrigo in the first half in particular, in between Luke Shaw and Harry Maguire in that inside left position. I think Chris Sutton mentioned it in commentary. So there was a definite different direction that Luis Enrique was wanting to take this Spanish side in. Did it always work? No, but it certainly kept England guessing.
It affects defenders, doesn't it? When you've got that movement off defenders, they had players coming in behind off the back of it. There was a set plan to it. Yeah. Yes, they did dominate possession tonight, but there was a lot of that movement in behind.
And crosses being put in the box, and you know, things we never saw before. We saw in that package, Ramos clipping a few from the back.
Well, that's what, tell me, when you've got someone like Diego Costa to hopefully to be introduced back into this side, what does he need? What does he thrive on? Balls into the penalty area, put crosses in. They did that so often tonight. They created so many chances off the back of getting into wide areas, fizzing it across 6-yard box, or pullbacks, or even crosses that's been stood up to the far post. They were a real threat throughout, but it wasn't the Spain that we saw at the World Cup against the very predictable Spain that we saw against Russia. It was a real purpose into wide areas.
So that's
crosses,
really encouraging for them. Yeah, that game against Russia, by the way, they had over 800 passes, which was a World Cup record. They ended with 562 completed passes tonight.
Yeah,
so there's
wasn't a bad, was it? Wasn't
still decent, but it's evolution anyway. Towards sort of middle period after the second half, you were both saying that England were looking aimless in what they were doing in build-up play. But then we had that late flurry. So how did they create those chances? Was it just Spain sitting back, or did they become more creative?
Spain did sit back the first 15, 20 minutes, second half. There was a real lull, but they did increase the energy. There was more urgency about their play. Marcus Rashford looked a little bit more lively. This is what we would have come to expect. Set pieces, Harry Maguire more often than not the target. But they got into these areas a little bit more frequently. I suppose the argument can be made that they're not the most creative once they get into there, but it was a good run for Rashford, slightly offside, but a magnificent save by De Gea again.
OK, lots more still to come. Yeah, strong stuff there from Harry Kane. I think the referee bottled it on that decision for the Danny Welbeck disallowed goal. There is the A4 table. Spain hosts Croatia next on Tuesday. England take on Switzerland in a friendly that night. We'll have that game live for you here on Virgin Media 3. Harry Kane obviously voicing his displeasure about that disallowed goal. Before the game, though, we talked about him and whether his form, despite getting the golden boot tonight, which was presented to him before the game, whether he's quite as lethal and as much of a threat as he was before he got injured towards the end of last season. What did you make of his performance tonight, Keith?
I thought there was signs that he's rusty, maybe carrying some kind of injury. Looked like he was... We've both been in this position at different stages of your career where you have got some kind of issue, whatever it is, you protect yourself so you don't play to that 100% limit. And that's what it was screaming out for me from this one here. Look, we were kind of in agreement in the end, myself and Kev, whether it was a penalty or not. He just didn't have that sharpness, whereas if he's bang on it, he takes that away from the defender. This is the De Gea save. But this one here, this is Harry Kane in a nutshell. Takes it, even though it's a difficult one to take, and then buries it left foot into the bottom corner. I just thought all evening long, he was just half a yard short. Didn't have lots of chances. That certainly was.
That was offside, but the finish there just wasn't Harry Kane at his best, was it?
It doesn't look to me. It doesn't look to me. Even his anticipation, you know, and seriously going to stretch himself here. It probably is one of those probably get away from him that, but is his anticipation what it was? Is he sharp enough to react to things? And he just, as Keith's saying there, just looks a little bit off.
Do you think it's a physical issue? A hangover from that injury towards the end of last season?
Well, it looks that way. It looks to me like you're saying you're playing within yourself. When we say playing within yourself, it looks to me he just doesn't want to overstretch himself just in case something goes. That's the way it looks when you're seeing him at the moment.
So is there an argument for a player in a situation like that, and maybe you as ex-players will just throw it out completely, that you need to take a bit of time out, that maybe after the World Cup he needed to take a longer break and get his body right, or you just want to get back playing? You
do want to get back playing, yes, but there's maybe it's maybe when you get a bit older, when you start to have that realism and what your body can actually cope with, you might need to take that little bit of extra time away. It was interesting, he said that Pochettino suggested that he wasn't happy with his own performances actually at the World Cup, even though he did get the golden boot. So he didn't look sharp even throughout. I mean, in open play during the World Cup, he's not necessarily looked sharp watching him for Tottenham this season. Yeah, he's been amongst the goals, but he's just not at the level of sharpness that Keith touched on that he probably was over the last couple of seasons.
Serious amount of football the last few years. Under 21s, going back to a long season, played for them, and then constantly has to play for Spurs because they don't have the strength and depth. They don't trust Llorente, and it's the same with England. They're so reliant on him in that area.
Do you think that's a sense of him being the captain and the hero and the guy out front, that he feels responsibility? I have to lead the line here.
I think there's that without a shadow of a doubt, and with the armband that's given him that extra amount of responsibility. But I also think he's a little bit old school in his ways. He's not a typical modern day player. If you contrast it to Daniel Sturridge, he will not play unless he is 100%.
I also think as well, look, he knows what Messi's doing. He knows what Ronaldo's doing. And I'm sure that's in his mind. He wants that goals record to be equal to those. He might not necessarily reach those levels, but that's what he sees in his mind. He's trying to get better and better.
There's some great stats in the Times newspaper during the week. I had an article that before the injury in March that kept him out for a month, his goal-scoring rate of the season was 0.99 per game, pretty much a goal per game, and it's dropped to 0.79 per game, which is not too bad.
Shocking, that, Tommy. Yeah. You and your stats, Tommy, I tell you.
There you go.
Honestly,
there you go. The truth's in there somewhere. I'm not quite sure where. David De Gea's performance tonight. Funnily enough, in the build-up to this one, there was a bit of talk in Spanish press that maybe he would be dropped after his World Cup performances.
I couldn't believe it. Look, he had a tricky World Cup, but so did Spain.
Yeah.
He wasn't exactly getting well covered and well marshalled there. I thought it was nonsense. I still think he's the best goalkeeper in the world, even though
Really?
Kepa is. But yeah, I do. I think he's unbelievable. The reaction saves, we've seen it tonight, whether it's with his feet, the Rashford one as it comes in here, the reaction saves, the agility. It's time and time again. He just produces magnificent saves. And he's at a stage now where I just expect him to save that.
That's unbelievable. It is unbelievable to save that. The reaction, as Keith's saying, this one's fairly much straight at him, but stands up. He makes Rashford... He's trying to influence Rashford to make the decision for him. That's what Rashford should maybe be a bit more composed, put it into the corner. This one here, Rashford is actually offside, but how often have we seen that save with his feet? Do you know why I think he's under pressure? You've seen the build-up to the World Cup where he snubbed the King over him, over his... There was something that was brought up against him, a case brought against him a few years ago, and the King mentioned all these years ago that he didn't think he's fitting enough to play for the Spanish team. So that was why he's maybe under a bit more pressure.
There's a suggestion that he's not, with the trend of modern goalkeepers having to be good with their feet, that he's not quite good enough in terms of distributing the ball.
No, I don't see that. No. He's certainly not as good as Edison. He's probably not as good as Alisson, I suppose, to an extent. But he's the all-round game that he brings to United. How many times I think he single-handedly got United into the Champions League last season, and he has been the key player for them for such a long time.
Agree with Keith, best in the world?
All round, yes, I probably would say that. Certainly he's gone ahead of Manuel Neuer now in my eyes,
PFA Team of the Year 5 of the last 6 seasons, and United's Player of the Year 4 of the last 5 seasons, so not bad. Right.